Hello, everybody, and welcome in to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. It is Thursday, January 1st, 2026. Happy New Year to everybody. I'm your host, George Coach, and only Cody Roadcap. How's it going, Cody?
I'm doing good. New year, same me. Uh, some college football games are happening. Texas Tech lost in a surpriser. Miami beat Ohio State yesterday. So the college football playoffs has been exciting so far. We had the Stranger Things finale. No spoilers on this show. But yeah, we're kicking off 2026 in the right way.
Yes, we are. I mean, I enjoyed a little bit of an Ohio State upset. I enjoyed the fact that everyone was bagging on the college football playoff committee for putting in Miami, and now they've won two. So it's going good over there. And there's our 30 seconds of college football talk on the show because it's been a while since we did that.
For sure. But more will be coming soon, as we only have one game left of the regular season, and then we'll be talking NFL draft before you know it.
Yes, we will. That's the kind of college football talk that kind of carries over, though. So a little bit different. But we're here with you Mondays and Thursdays, 6:30 East through the Super Bowl. We're going to keep you up to date on everything through the NFL playoffs, do a couple DFS lineups to the playoffs, etc. But we have one more week in the regular season, like Cody said. In the meantime, make sure you're following us at the Couch GMs on Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok to get even more to do from the show. You can always DM us with any questions if you're still playing fantasy right now, want a little advice, whatever, or drop it in the comments if you're here with us live. In the meantime, let's see what is happening. Cody and I did our best on our Monday show to kind of go through and see who we thought was starting and sitting for this week. The announcements that we have so far, Eagles and Chargers announcing that they're sitting starters. Chargers at least said Herbert. Sounds like other guys might come in for a short time, but they're not going to be in the game for long. Eagles sounds like all the big names on their offense and defense are going to sit fully. Packers and Bills expected to sit starters. Obviously, Packers did say that Jordan Love is not going to start. They're going to go with Clayton Tune. They're dropping right past Malik Willis, who's also banged up. Bills expected to start Josh Allen, kind of like what you expected on our Monday show, but he'll be in for a snap, maybe a drive. So not a whole lot of surprises. Any thoughts here?
No, I think the Eagles one is the interesting one because if they win and the Bears lose, they could get the 2 seed. So they do have some seeding in play where like the Packers are locked into the 7 seed. So it makes total sense for them to not play anybody in week 18, especially with the guys that they're already banged up. I do think maybe a couple starters will play just because they are so banged up. I know it's crazy to keep mentioning that, but they had 4 more people go out on IR after this week. And this wasn't just like guys, one was an Achilles, one was a knee injury, maybe 2 knee injuries. And it wasn't just like, oh, there's only 1 week left, we're going to start putting these guys on IR. No, they're not coming back for playoff runs if they were to get there or whatnot. So they're pretty banged up. They had a bevy of waiver moves, but one of them did include claiming Travion Diggs, former Cowboys cornerback. So you might get to see him in some action, see some rookies. And the week 18 is going to be wild just because of the amount of teams playing random guys and who's going to be on the teams next year, and started looking at that like almost like a postseason, preseason kind of atmosphere this week.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what teams that are out of contention aren't going to say anything, but might, play some guys for a bit and then rest guys, or like some teams are going to the, second quarterback because the Jets are still playing Brady Cook because why not? Marvin Harrison is out this week for the Cardinals. They're just not going to push it with his heel injury because there's no point. So we're going to see a lot of things like that there's no way that you and I can cover it all or even find it all at this moment. But if you are still playing in fantasy or looking at a DFS lineup, make sure you're looking at the news very closely.
Yeah, for sure. And to your point, like, I don't think, like the Packers, they play the Vikings, and I would expect like Justin Jefferson to still play this week.
Mm-hmm.
But does, he not get as many reps this week, and they want to get some looks at some other guys? Or the same thing could be said, like you mentioned, the Marvin Harrison. That's a great example. A guy that's a little bit banged up. We're going to hold him out this week. And I think that might even stem into some of the games that are very important, like maybe not to the extent of the game that is for the number 1 seed in the NFC, the Seahawks and the 49ers, but with CMC banged up, George Kittle, like do you play them to try to get the bye next week, or do you give them the week off, and then maybe if you're lucky they get 2 weeks off? So that's going to be an interesting conversation as well.
It is, and we don't have a whole lot of news on that one yet. So keep an eye on the injury reports as we get through Friday. Actually, I think they're a Saturday game. I can see if they get a final injury report out before we get off the air. But, San Francisco and LA seem to be the two teams that are so late that we can never catch them.
Yeah. And Seattle's right up there with them. All them West Coast teams.
So we probably won't have any luck while we're on the air here, but coming out tonight should be the final injury report for those two teams. Before we get to the rest of injuries, even though we mentioned a bunch, news came out right before we got on the air, Cody. Troy Aikman was hired as an advisor by the Miami Dolphins to help them in their search for a new GM. Part of me thinks this is a good move, trying to get someone experienced. The other part of me, my mind went to this seems like McDaniel's safe now.
Well, I was going to spin the question back on you too. Like the question when you're always looking for a GM and you have a head coach in place is like how much. It's the same way with quarterbacks too, that aren't like the true elite franchise guys. What do you do with them? I know there was some buzz that like Cleveland, if they move on from Stefanski, is going to be very interested in a Mike McDaniel to go pair there. So I think he'd be like a name that would create a lot of buzz. But like if the GM, I mean, let's look at Liam Cohen this past year, right? Like Jacksonville wanted him. He said, no, I don't want to work with Trent Baalke. And then they're like, okay, we'll fire Trent Baalke and we'll go out and hire, and we get Liam Cohen because that's our guy. And then they found a GM that would work with him. Maybe they'll do that same approach and find a GM that works with Mike McDaniel, or maybe they'll go thinking Mike McDaniel's safe, and then they'll find a GM and he's like, actually, Mike McDaniel's not my guy. And they're going to have to make that decision then, which could put them behind the 8 ball, so to speak, when the head coaching searches really start to take off.
That's true. Just because they seem like they're keeping him now doesn't mean that even a week or two into the offseason, they decide not to. But I will say the other thing, it does seem like GM searches tend to go longer than head coach searches. So who knows if like this end does, even though with, Aikman coming on, does take, 3-4 weeks into the offseason if they would make a move and pull the plug on McDaniel that late if they decide early that they're going to keep him.
Yeah, and maybe it's a 1-year thing, and then like the GM comes in with the mindset of, hey, if we have a good season, because the Dolphins, they played well down the stretch when they had nothing else to play for. I mean, they beat the Buccaneers last week in a game the Buccaneers needed to win, so to speak, to try to win the AFC or NFC South, excuse me. And maybe it's a 1-year thing, and then if they struggle next year, then Mike McDaniel's the one that goes, and the GM gets to pick his coach.
That's very true. You never know if that comes up, and I mean, if McDaniel gets them back on track, there's been enough success that I don't think a GM would be upset with keeping him, but knowing that he has the ability to pull the plug after a year could be a thing that could bring in a GM. I don't know. Interested to see where that goes, and obviously we're going to have a lot of coach talk on Monday, as Black Monday will bring out if there is or how many head coaches lose their job as the season ends.
For sure.
Moving to injuries, we did mention Jordan Love slightly. He's not going to play in Week 18, but it was confirmed that he cleared concussion protocol, clearing the path for him to play in their wild card playoff game. So that's good news for the Packers. In that Ravens-Steelers game, we had Lamar for the Ravens as a full participant on a Wednesday for the first time in more than a month. So maybe him sitting that extra week with his back also helped clear up his ankle, knee issues, whatever he's been having in the lower body. And then for the Steelers, TJ Watt was limited with his collapsed lung issue. I did hear last week that they said they wanted to have full participants in practice all week, but it didn't sound like Tomlin closed the door on him still coming back this week if he reacts well.
Yeah, and they're going to need him. So
yeah. Yes, they will.
If he can get one full practice on Friday, I think he'd be good.
Yeah, it sounded kind of ridiculous to me when I heard Tomlin last week, like he's not coming back till he fully participates all week. I'm like, no.
So it's a win and get in for them. They're the opposite of like wanting to play their young guys. Like, not saying that they're going to push their superstar, because there's long-term effects too of, coming back off. Like, he's going to be medically cleared, but if he gets a full practice in on Friday and it's his first practice of the week, I would still expect him to play on Sunday.
I agree with that. I think as long as he's medically cleared, there's no reason that the Steelers would keep him out at this point.
For sure.
And moving to San Francisco, I know we're keeping an eye on George Kittle. We're also just keeping an eye on CMC. He was a DNP on Wednesday, but it sounds like it was more precautionary and he's going to be good to go. He has been kind of held out of practice at times this year, but it's never been anything serious.
Was this related to his back injury that he got
Yeah.
where you could see him working? Yeah, that's what I thought. And he was working out on the sideline during the game, but he still came in and had one of his best games of the season, but it may hamper his chase of going for 1,000 this year, because I believe I have to look at the number, but I believe he just needs over 100 receiving yards. It might be tough if he is limited.
110, if I remember correctly, which, I mean, is tough for a running back anyway, but San Fran could try to get him involved a little extra. They're going to get him involved as much as they can anyway in this situation where they're playing for a bye week.
For sure.
All right, I'm sure there's more things that'll pop up throughout the week, so make sure you are keeping an eye on that news, and you can drop any questions either in the chat or in our DMs. In the meantime, why don't we have a little bit of fun today and do our 2025 Fantasy Football Awards?
And that's where Cody's like, oh, don't have a bumper.
Cool. Good job, Cody. Anyway, so every year at the end of the fantasy season, we drop our award winners for the fantasy year. We have awards today for our waiver wire pickup of the year, fantasy bust of the year, fantasy rookie of the year, draft steal, playoff MVP, and MVP. So how's this going to work? We are going to drop our nominees for each award for you. And then do you want to go back and forth, Cody, on picking our winner?
Yeah. As the person that gets the final say, like we'll talk about, but
Yeah.
There is two of us here, so sometimes we have a split. So we have to have a back and forth on who has the final say awarding it, but you get to hear it all broken down live.
All right. Do you want to go first as final say or second?
I will go second.
Okay. So starting off, our first award will be our waiver wire pickup of the year. Our nominees. We have Kenny Gainwell, who really came on strong at the end of the season, finished as running back 16, had a solid finish in the fantasy playoffs. We have Wan'Dale Robinson, who was the ADP drafted wide receiver 70. He was undrafted in a lot of places. He finished as wide receiver 13 after all the injuries that happened in New York. And then two quarterbacks on our list. First is Matt Stafford, who was quarterback 23 in ADP preseason, finished as QB3. And Trevor Lawrence, who was QB 20, ADP of 138, finished as QB4. What are your thoughts for waiver wire pickup?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple ways to look at this, right? Like Kenny Gainwell, undrafted, wasn't even a thought. Like he was like, I believe, the 250th, somewhere in that range prospect, ADP wise. So unless you're in your 16-man leagues, like definitely going undrafted there. Matt Stafford, he's a prime example of why we always say draft quarterbacks late. Hindsight, looking at this, 22 other quarterbacks we talked ourselves into over Matt Stafford. Yeah. I'm gonna assume a lot of that was the mysterious chamber RV that was outside the Rams facility the last month of the postseason that kind of scared us to push him down.
The immortal chamber, the back injury deal.
Yes, yeah. I couldn't remember what the actual name of
it
was.
The immortal chamber. Yeah.
Wan'Dale Robinson, like when you just look at like he was wide receiver 70, finished wide receiver 13. I don't know about you, but I don't know if there was ever a point though I felt confident playing Wan'Dale Robinson.
Some matchups, but never consistently.
For a guy that finished top 13, like maybe that's on us. Maybe that's recency bias and like looking past the situation. And then Trevor Lawrence, what he did, especially in the fantasy playoffs, was impressive, but another quarterback to get a top 4 finish. I tend to lean Matt Stafford with this one as a guy that might be the NFL MVP or is at least in the conversation. 22 other quarterbacks in front of him, undrafted in most leagues. Like even unless you're like 12-man leagues, everybody takes 2, then he's getting drafted. Like that's where he was at to finish as a top 3 quarterback. That's where I would go. But I'm not hard set on that one.
Okay. Well, to back you up on Wan'Dale, like he was kind of inconsistent too. Even after the injuries, he still had a lot of weeks where he finished in single digits. So I think the couple big boom games he had and then us playing him by matchup kind of did make it like seem how his season went. I think the booms is why he ended up at wide receiver 13. So I'm cool with knocking him out. Gainwell, I think, came on so late that it's hard for me to make this, this is a full season award, and he did come up big when it mattered, but I kind of am not leaning towards him. And then I was like, Lawrence, who had the very strong finish, I think deserved to be in here for the conversation. But the fact that he was still listed in the streaming category in the fantasy playoffs up until maybe even the last week, it's hard to have him as the waiver wire pickup of the year, for this full season. So I'm with you, and I am totally cool with awarding our waiver wire pickup of the year to Matt Stafford.
Yeah, I like that. And I like what you mentioned about Kenny Gainwell. I mean, he did have the 30-point outbreak in week 4, but outside of that, that was his only game over 10 points until week 11. So
I wouldn't be shocked if we have people that would talk to us later that say, I picked up Gainwell in week 5, dropped him again, and then someone else got him or I got him back.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was some other, other names, like we don't have to go into like all the honorable mentions, but I think like Woody Marks just missed the list on this one. He was another, late season pickup. There was some injuries involved around his situation that kind of made it a little bit difficult too.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. Moving on to our second award, it is the Fantasy Bust of the Year. And this one was a very interesting one for this season specifically. I'll start with the running back. We got Ashton Genty on the list and his super elevated ADP 10, running back 6. He finished 39th overall as RB 14. Brian Thomas is on here, ADP 16, wide receiver 44 finish. And then Justin Jefferson, who went 6th overall, wide receiver, I think it was either 2 or 3, finished as wide receiver 28.
Yeah, and the key thing with this one is when we're saying bust, like we're taking like injuries out of it. If you missed a lot of time, like some people will obviously he's in the IHOP commercial about being in last place, but Malik Neighbors was a first round pick, 8th overall, tore his ACL in the first half of the season, missed. Obviously, that's going to hurt you, but that like we take injuries out of it. You could say the same thing with Tyreek Hill, Bucky Irving. Those are some names. That's why the nominees. I mean, I think even Brock Bowers falls in that category of injured too much to be in this situation. Jaden Daniels as well. So that's why this list has a little bit less of the nominees for me. And although I think Ashton Genty, because of where he finished, is a tough one, finishing at RB14, drafted as RB6, that's not as big of a drop off as the 2 wide receivers, which is Justin Jefferson at 6 and going to wide receiver 28, or Brian Thomas Jr. going from wide receiver 16 to wide receiver 44. And I go back and forth on this one. I mean, I think like the obvious answer might be Justin Jefferson. But if I think back to when we were talking about this pre-draft thing, like the reason he was going 6th, he was like the end of like the tier 1 players because we didn't know what was going to happen with JJ McCarthy. Brian Thomas
Why we
Jr.
just call him 9?
Yeah, we'll just call him 9. Brian Thomas Jr. was a guy that we were expecting a second year jump on. We really liked his value in the second round, and he ended up getting, I don't know if he actually finished outscored by Jacoby Myers or not, but Jacoby Myers definitely passed him in the second half of the season. I mean, he was banged up a little bit. That does play a factor into it, but it wasn't as much. So I actually think I'm leaning more towards Brian Thomas because of some of the expectations going in. But I also understand taking a guy in the top 6 and getting top 20, only getting the wide receiver 28 definitely doesn't help.
So not only did Jacoby Myers finish ahead of Brian Thomas, but Parker Washington ended up finishing ahead of him as well. Jacoby Myers is wide receiver 35, Parker Washington wide receiver 38, Thomas down at 44. But I want to make an argument for why this should be Justin Jefferson, because Jefferson played every game this year. And even though we were worried about the inconsistency at quarterback and what McCarthy was going to bring, like he had been quarterback proof before this, which is why we were still confident enough to pick him at pick 6 and take him in the first round. And Brian Thomas, as much as we were hoping for and expecting the second year jump, and it was very disappointing to see it didn't happen with the Jags being so good, especially, he still did miss 4 games.
That's valid. That is very valid. He did still miss the 4 games. I was trying to look here quick in terms of Obviously Justin Jefferson finished higher, but even if you went to like a fantasy points per game, he would have about 1 point more in PPR scoring than Brian Thomas. So yeah, this one's really tough for me because, like I said, Justin Jefferson, the all-star, you took him to the top. Brian Thomas, you thought was the up-and-comer, had a really good rookie season, but then fell to number 3 on the depth chart, so to speak, of scoring receivers in that offense. Which, if you had to pick, obviously I get the final say, but I will let you, would you go Justin Jefferson still?
I'm just trying to find one more stat here to try to see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that actually does. Okay. So I was trying to see how many single digit fantasy point finishes each of them had. And it was actually 7 for Justin Jefferson to 8 for Brian Thomas. So honestly, I was leaning Justin Jefferson. I thought he was the slam dunk for this award. But you've done a good job of talking me into Brian Thomas and the bigger drop being that, even though he's missed time. So I don't have a strong feeling either direction at this point. You push me right to the middle.
I think, and I'm right there too, and I think I'm going to go with Brian Thomas solely because of expectations at the beginning of the season. I feel like we talked about how Justin Jefferson's the star caliber player, but he was a risk because we didn't know what the quarterback situation was. And Brian Thomas felt like the guy that you would pair with a running back to be your wide receiver 1, and it really let you down to him finish. I'm going to go with Brian Thomas, and that'll be our bust of the year.
All right. So we're going to do fantasy rookie of the year next. And it's funny, we just talked about Ashton Genty in one way. Now we're going to talk about him in the other way, as he is a nominee for fantasy rookie of the year who finished at RB 14. Tet McMillan is also on this list, finishing at wide receiver 14. And Harold Fannin makes the list at tight end 5. I thought this was going to be Tyler Warren on this, and he was an honorable mention. But Harold Fannin had a strong end to the year to really put himself up in this conversation.
Yeah, if we would have did this after, when they were 8-1, after that first 10 weeks of the season, it would have been Tyler Warren, hands down.
Mm-hmm.
Only had, was having great games. He definitely slowed down, and then Harold Fanning kind of picked up there. So I was surprised too that Fanning even scored higher points than because of how good of a start. I mean, Warren's still tight end 7, so just a good way to point that out. And then Tet McMillan feels like the solid wide receiver. I think the same thing would have been said about like Abuka if he didn't get hurt. Like Abuka seemed like the home run. And some other honorable mentions would obviously be the 2 quarterbacks. Jackson Dart, he didn't play much, but when he did, he scored a lot of fantasy points because of his rushing ability. And then the last couple of weeks, Tyler Shaw has looked, or Shuck. I don't know why I keep wanting to call him Shaw.
I do too. It's fine.
Tyler Shuck has looked good, and he could have been in the conversation, but they started the season with Spencer Rattler, which makes this one very tough. Another very tough one. For me, I'm taking Ashton Genty out. Like, I get why he's there. He's the top rookie running back. Omari and Hampton might have had a better season if he started all year. Same with RJ Harvey if he started all year.
You haven't even mentioned Cam Scadaboo yet, who was on his way to be a shoo-in for a shot at this award, but he got hurt.
Yeah, so this one's a lot because a lot of the top rookies didn't play the whole season or got hurt. So I'm actually leaning Harold Fanning because he was the biggest surprise.
The only thing that makes me not want to pick Fannin here is the fact that he came on late, was on the waiver wire most of the year, as opposed to McMillan. Even though he started slow, he had a more consistent full year, which is why I'm leaning that way. But I was also in the mindset of taking Genty out. I don't know if it is the whole because he was drafted end of the first round, the expectations were so high that it didn't meet, and that's why it doesn't hit the same way. He was also just very bad in some games and some key games down the stretch. But I don't know. Do you want to try to lean me back towards Fannin a little bit more instead of going to Tet?
All right. So I just want to confirm that Fanning played in all the games. He did. They obviously there's still a game left, so things could change. But we're talking about the tight end versus a wide receiver. Harold Fanning only scored 16 less points than Tet McMillan in PPR.
Wow.
So 150 to 167, there's some decimal places there. So like that as a guy that was taken, as a guy to be the top. Obviously, the touchdowns hurt him early. That was like a running, like when is Tet going to get in the end zone?
Yep.
And the other thing I would go back with Harold Fanning is Quinshon Judkins, another name we did not mention. He could have been in this category if he stayed healthy and got to, play at the beginning of the season as well. But there wasn't another. You could say this, I guess, about both. There was, I guess, who had the better number 2 option that you felt comfortable playing? Maybe that's a way to look at it. Like Rico and Quinshon Judkins, I think they're pretty similar. Like they both had their stretches and they both were injured. But then like from the wide receiver position or the tight end position, like I couldn't even tell you a tight end on the Panthers. Tommy Tremble, I think, is still their tight end. But you weren't playing any of them. They traded Thielen. Like Jalen Coker was a guy that we thought might shine for a little bit, but he didn't pan out. Leggett didn't really do anything. So it was McMillan. And then on the Brown side, like outside of that one game for Jerry Jeudy, like I feel like he was pretty inconsistent. They tried it with their really fast guy out of Texas that came on late that was undrafted.
Name's on tip of my tongue. Yes. Isaiah Bond.
Like, but he was never like a guy you were like these offenses were bad, and these are the two people that you wanted to start on their offense. Does it give you? So I think you can go either way. I don't think you can go wrong. I think I'd still lean Fanning just because of the points. The total points are very similar, and one's a tight end and one's a wide receiver. But if you want to take Tet because he was the better overall player, I think that's fine too.
No, I think that stat is what leaned me towards Fannin the most, and I'm going to go ahead and I'll lock in Harold Fannin as our fantasy rookie of the year. But the fact that he was that close to Tet, despite being at the tight end position, and how bad the tight end position was this year, and I think I actually have a stat I'll drop with someone else in our next category, but makes it even more valuable than that wide receiver 14. Because I can even say I had a couple of teams with Tet, and he wasn't even a mainstay in my lineup because I was deep at the wide receiver position. I know he probably was for a lot of teams, but it didn't feel like a wide receiver 14 finish to me.
Yeah, I mean, we just talked about Wan'Dale finishing 13 above him.
Yeah,
so
it was weird year.
Definitely a weird year.
Yeah, as opposed to like just throwing a random name out there. Zay Flowers finished, I think, as like wide receiver 16 or 17, if I remember correctly. And he had way more yards, he just didn't have touchdowns.
Yeah.
And he felt like a better play than those two most of the year, even though the numbers didn't show it.
Zay Flowers actually, this might be standard scoring because I didn't change the settings, but he finished 12 currently, but that would make sense if it's
but still he's right in line with that 12, 13, 14. So that's good to see. He did get a couple touchdowns down the stretch in the fantasy playoffs, so that probably is what bumped it.
Yeah, this whole year was weird in the sense of like it felt like riding the waves of players. Like I mentioned Ibuka, Roma Dunze at the very beginning, Tyler Warren, and then they kind of fell off and you had to go with the second wave. And then the third wave, you got to like Michael Wilson out of nowhere having some big games. Harold Fanning came on strong. Kenny Gainwell was like the last third of the season, like a really strong play. It was a lot of like riding the waves, and with all the injuries, the rookie situation just made it very tough to pick one of these guys.
Definitely. There was a lot of playing the wire this year the right way, but it wasn't like playing the wire for the rest of the season. There wasn't really that guy for the most part, like not like Stafford, for example, but that you picked up off the wire, you played him the entire season, it was fine. It was like you picked him up in the hot streak, you got rid of him after, and then you find the next guy in the hot streak.
No, I'm pretty sure if we went back, I don't know if we've ever picked a quarterback for waiver wire pickup because there's always been like the league winner situation, and that's why this year was it's been a fun year. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
but it was definitely an interesting year to break down and go through this each and every week.
It felt way different than any other year that you and I have done this. And I mean, this is season 5 that you and I have done this. So,
That sounds crazy.
right, isn't it? I mean, we're over 300 episodes here, man.
Yeah, I feel like we just started. I feel like I don't even post the episodes on time still. So
You'll get there. It's all good.
work in
Next
progress.
category, we actually have the most nominees for this one. I have a couple of interesting stats to drop for some of these guys. So, draft steal of the year. First off, we have Devon Achane, who was drafted pretty high, ADP 17, RB9. He finishes RB5, but is the only player in the league to score more than 10 half PPR points every single week. George Pickens, he was an ADP of 58. He finishes wide receiver 4. We got Kyle Pitts on here. He was tight end 2. His ADP was tight end 16. But I'll also throw here, he was actually closer to finishing as tight end 27, who was Kate Otten, than he was to finishing as tight end 1, Trey McBride. 99-point difference to Kate Otten versus 103-point difference to Trey McBride. That's in full PPR, but I thought that was interesting. Javonte Williams added on here. He was an ADP of 98, RB35. He finished as RB11. And then Chris Olave, the silent assassin this year, ADP 73, wide receiver 34. He finished as wide receiver 6.
And I'm also going to add one more.
Okay.
Fan Andrew T. Also, congrats on your Couch Champs World Cup participation. And he's throwing in Drake May for not stream of the year, but
steal of the year.
Steal of the year.
Okay.
So, I mean, Drake May, that makes a ton of sense. I believe, let's see, Drake May, since I did not have this prepared, but I'll pull it up very quickly, did finish as quarterback number 2. And when it was draft season, he was...
I think you're going to beat me to it.
The QB 16 was where people were picking him up. So
126 overall in drafts.
Correct. So that's another bump there. I mean, getting the quarterback number 2 on the season is fantastic, especially that late in the draft season. But I think that plays a factor into late round quarterbacks. And I mean, of the 6 quarterbacks that scored over 300 points, Josh Allen led them at 360. But then it's Drake May, Matt Stafford, Trevor Lawrence, Dak Prescott, Caleb Williams. I'm pretty sure they were all right around that.
Some waiver wire pickups and some QB2s that you drafted really late.
Yeah, so that would be my only knock about, like, there was a lot of other good quarterbacks around there.
Yeah.
As well. For me, so I go back and forth because the Achane, the consistency, right?
I honestly didn't quite expect him to get a big push for this award, but I thought he deserved a shout somewhere for the consistency he had all year, and this felt like the best place for it.
Yeah, I would agree with that because of, getting that consistency, but he was a top 3 round pick. Mm-hmm. So, and then the Kyle Pitts one, it's fun. It's the joke. It's his year. It finally was. You mentioned how close he was, but he also scored 45 points in 1 week. And like, if he didn't have that and that was a normal week, he was probably in like the middle of the tight end range.
Yeah.
So
honestly, there was times this year where I either bench Kyle Pitts or debated dropping him. So that end of the year really pushed him up, but I'm okay with you knocking him out of here too.
So for me, it really comes down to George Pickens, Chris Olave, and Javonte Williams. I think Javonte slowed down a little bit in the second half of the season. So I'm going to take him off the list, although he would be a nominee. And then it's really just the Olave versus the George Pickens. And one was 73, one was 58. So both middle round guys. Olave 2 rounds later. Wide receiver 6, wide receiver 4. I think there's still the part of me that wants to lean George Pickens, but I am very willing to admit that George Pickens was my guy at the beginning of the year that I was pounding the table for. So if I'm being too biased and it should be Chris Olave, please tell me.
My argument for Olave over Pickens is you made the argument that Javonte Williams should be dropped out of this because he dropped off near the end of the year. George Pickens also dropped off some during the end of the year. He had a goose egg at some point near the end of the season as well. And he made most of his points when CD Lamb was out of the lineup. Once CD Lamb got back in, he kind of dropped right back down into the like wide receiver 2 flex range for some games. Chris Olave, while dealing with some bad quarterbacks at the end of the year, was still getting a ton of targets, and he was like finishing solid, just didn't get a lot of hype. And then at the end of the year, when they put in Shuck, he really was like an X factor for teams that no one, including us, was talking about Chris Olave, but he was just silently putting up good game after good game. And that finish is what makes me think you should go him instead of Pickens.
So what if I told you that they both only had 3 games under 10 points and the rest were above? So like we think of this drop off for Pickens, but his drop off after week 13 was he had back-to-back under 10, week 14, 15, which hurt a lot of people. But then he had a 26-point game in week 16, and then it was only 11.8, but still over 10 points in week 17. Where Olave, on the other hand, you know, he had a bad game in week 14 as well, but his playoff run of 20, 36, 25 is really impressive. I just don't know if this were award, because we have the playoff person, would he fit better in that category? And we don't know. We don't even know who the nominees are yet. We're not getting there. So I think I'll go.
I'm cool with you going either way. I'll say that.
So I really think I came in going, I'm picking George Pickens, but I'm wondering if getting someone approximately 15 picks later that scored 30 less points, 25 less points was a better steal.
And had stronger finish. I know it's a full season award, but cashed in every week of the fantasy playoffs as opposed to that bust week 15.
Yeah. He just didn't help if you needed him to get in.
Yeah.
So
neither did Pickens.
And it's like they both finished with 9 touchdowns, so it wasn't even like, you know, like in PPR.
It's amazing they were very similar wide receivers.
I'm going to go Chris Olave.
Okay.
I think the value of 15 picks later for 25 points, and the scores might be a little bit different if it was PPR, because Olave had 8 more catches, so that would close the gap there. So I'm going to go Chris Olave, and I'll give him the championship run as the slight edge.
All right. I did not know I was going to get you to Chris Olave for this award, but he was my favorite coming into here, besides me just throwing A-Chan on there because I thought he deserved a shout. So
nope. It's all good. It's good to talk through these because I came into this going, it's George Pickens all the way. And again, that was probably just me going, I told you so. Which I don't get.
That's 100%. I'm okay with you throwing another I told you so on there too. And it was a call that I did not believe in that you made. So props to you.
Do you know what really just bothers me?
What's that?
Let me see. Nope, I think we're still good. I was going to say what's really going to bother me is if that hamstring prevents Devontae from being the 2 Rams wide receivers in the top 12.
Oh, and yeah.
He's still currently sitting at wide receiver 7. So
if you hit on both of those, it's been a good year for you.
There's a reason why I only draft wide receivers.
Well, you know what wide receivers draft. That's the other thing. And I think you avoided Brian Thomas in all your leagues. I didn't do that.
I did. I picked him up on the waivers.
That's a little different. You're taking a shot in the dark at that point.
I never played him, but I was just like, just in case he goes off, it's not going to be against me.
There you go. That's the way to think about it. All right. Next award is Fantasy Playoff MVP. And I will say Chris Olave is an honorable mention, but did not make the nominee list for this one. I got 3 on here. First one, is Derrick Henry for his 45 points in the fantasy championship, but I will say the other 2 weeks were a little bit weaker. He scored 74 total in the fantasy playoffs. Bijan Robinson had 89 points in the fantasy playoffs, including a 39.9 in the fantasy championship on a Monday night, which is even better for some of those teams that thought they had it locked and Bijan came in and stole it. And then the other guy on here is Trevor Lawrence, who scored a record 98 fantasy points, most by a quarterback in the fantasy playoff weeks in the Super Bowl era.
Yeah, that was a crazy stat to see. It doesn't even feel like a lot of points, but maybe that could just be also a knock or a bump to Bijan Robinson, as like he's only 9 points off of a quarterback's record-breaking performance.
Yeah.
So,
and I mean, we're looking at 3-week stretches here, so like it feels like not a lot. We're talking about 98 and 89 points, but divide that over 3 weeks, and that's pretty crazy.
Yes, I think it's between those two. Derrick
Henry did a good job to finish the job, but like he had 11 points in week 15, so I'm okay with knocking him off.
Yeah, and I mean Bijan Robinson, he also finished as, I believe, RB3 on the season. I know that his playoff push definitely he finishes RB3 on the season, which again, this is just a playoff award, but wanted to give that shout out make sure I had that right. And I think just the consistency plus the almost 40-point performance, maybe there is some bias, and I'm okay admitting that it was the Monday night game and so many people thought they were out, and then he just went off and brought them back. I wasn't playing for a fantasy championship. I was playing to avoid getting out or avoid getting 10th place. And both of our teams were bad. So obviously scoring 70 points and getting a win or 75 points is not impressive at all. However, when you go into the game with the scoring only 33 points and then Bijan Robinson outscores your whole team and gets you the 9th place victory, it feels kind of impressive. So
that's impressive.
Bijan would be my pick. Trevor Lawrence got not that this should play a factor as he already won an award, but we gave him his props for how he played earlier. I'm going with Bijan Robinson because it also felt like it finally paid off. Like he's RB3 on the season, but we went all season long like, oh, Tyler Algier stealing these points. Tyler Algier is like, are we overdrafting Bijan Robinson? And it finally felt like it paid off in the fantasy playoffs to have him on your team.
That's very true. And I mean, if we look at it in another way too, Bijan Robinson, 89 points, half PPR in the fantasy playoffs. Next closest player, Derrick Henry. And then Chase Brown was behind that. The gap in points, a little bit more significant. I don't know if I actually think I had an error on here. Derrick Henry had 78 points, not 74 in the fantasy playoffs. That's my bad. But still, that's what, 11-point gap and then another 8 points to get down to Chase Brown. And I think one of the things that hurts Trevor Lawrence is that even though he was so good, there was actually another, at least recent waiver wire pickup who finished very close to him, as Brock Purdy had 94 points in the fantasy playoffs after he went off in a night game and during the fantasy playoffs and such too. So Bijan stands out even more compared to his pack, compared to Trevor Lawrence. Even though he broke a record, he had somebody right on his heels too.
Yeah, I don't know whose turn it is. I forget if it's my turn to pick or yours.
It's me.
Well, I think you just convinced me on Bijan Robinson even more. I don't know if that you did the same for yourself.
Yeah, I thought I went into this thinking Trevor Lawrence was my pick, but surprisingly, even though a record happened, I'm going Bijan Robinson for fantasy playoff MVP. Hope everyone out there wasn't burned by that Monday night and actually was benefited by it.
Yeah, it was a crazy game. And as someone, speaking of that game, on my little side tangent here, who lost by a point in a full PPR because Puka Nacua didn't have one more catch. So whether it was
catch.
The catch that he almost had on the sideline or the touchdown that was called back by penalty, the drop that he had 30 yards down the field, or the other touchdown that was called back by penalty, it was a rough night for me. Just needing one more point from Puka Nacua and seeing like 15 points get called back, dropped or called back by penalty.
That hurts so
That's
bad.
fantasy in a nutshell.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. All right, one more award here. The one everyone's been waiting for, the Fantasy MVP of the Year. We got 4 nominees. First off, Christian McCaffrey, who came in at the end to steal the RB1 crown from what we thought was going to be a slam dunk Jonathan Taylor run. Ends up being CMC. We got Puka Nacua on here, wide receiver 1 finish. We also got Jackson Smith and Jigba, a wide receiver 2 finish, a whole half a point and half PPR behind him. That's why we had to put both on here. Had to give both of them a shot. And then Trey McBride makes the fantasy MVP list with his tight end 1 performance. He was actually the 16th overall player in fantasy. Absolutely insane for a tight end. And another call that Cody made correct this year. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm seeing Trey McBride is the 12th overall player in half-point PPR on the site that I'm looking at. So that just gives him an even more of an upgrade. Maybe this site's wrong. Maybe it's miscalculating something. Who knows? But these ones are all interesting to me. The Jackson Smith and Jigba versus Puka Nacua. Now, I think if Pua didn't miss a game, this conversation becomes a little bit more like they're definitely more separated at this point. It's not the half a point. However, they're separated by half a point, but your guy Devon Achane is sitting between them in overall half point PPR in terms of total points. Puka Nacua is fifth in scoring between flex players. So I'm just taking out quarterbacks in this situation. So and that might be why mine sits 12th overall because I'm not including quarterbacks. So you might have 4 quarterbacks.
So I don't know. I double checked the numbers. I don't know where the 16 came from. I don't know which was put that on the rundown. He was 12th in flex, 24th overall.
Gotcha. So yeah, typo on me. We'll just put it on my end. So McBride, I think, is in the conversation just because of, like you mentioned, he had 100 more points than the next closest tight end. Like I don't think that is, at a position like that is a lot of points to have over your competitors all season long. As you know, you only start 1. I guess you can start 2 in a flex position. But the CMC has 70 more points roughly in half PPR more than Puka Nacua. And maybe it's just because I went on the rant on the Monday show about CMC should be in the conversation for MVP. He's probably not going to win it in the league, but he definitely should be in the fantasy MVP. A guy that you took in the second round because you were concerned about his health. He battled through all year long and probably got you to the championship game. So for me, it would go McCaffrey, then McBride, then the 2 wide receivers. What are your thoughts?
So I want to give as many props as I can to McBride because normally we're like, tight end. If he's tight end 1 and has that much of a gap over tight end 2, you can see how much of a difference that makes week over week for a team that has him. But then you're also looking at the fact that not only was he competitive in almost scoring 100 more points in PPR over tight end 2, he also was flex position 12 overall. That is crazy. And I think that he would definitely at least be number 2 for me. I do agree with you that I think CMC is my leader. Just because of how strong he came on at the end. I don't think a lot of us realized how good of a season he was having when we were trying to, make our argument of like, oh, but like it's Jonathan Taylor coming back or Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be the guy who's going to win leagues this year. And then all of a sudden CMC said, don't forget about me. Every year I've started 17 games. I finished as at least running back 2. And he came back and took running back 1. And I'm actually trying to see how close he got to the top of the list of best fantasy seasons of all time, because I know Jonathan Taylor was on the run for that at the beginning of the year before they really did slow down. And I don't know if he cracked the top 10, but I think he actually got pretty close.
I'm trying to look it up too. Hopefully my friend Google Gemini will so let's see. Let me switch my thing here over to PPR instead of half point PPR because that's what Gemini gave me. So Chris McCaffrey, again, 1 week short, but some of these guys only have the 17 game season, so we can He's at 404 PPR points, and it doesn't look like he would make the top 5.
I can try to help you out. You said 404. Math on the air for us is not a great time. 17 weeks. 23.7 a game. Okay, so I did find Fantasy Pros has a per week points per week leaderboard, in which LaDainian Tomlinson obviously leads. CMC in 2019 is number 2. He by week, so that kind of negates the extra week, would finish as number 6 all time in points per game.
I found another list but it includes quarterbacks, and I think we can take them out because they typically score more points. So I'm just rolling through here. He would be 16 on this list, but that's 3, 4, 5. A lot of Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes.
A lot of Lamar Jackson for sure.
So
that's also 6th in running backs. I should mention that.
Yeah, this would be, it looks like if you take out the quarterbacks, we're talking like at worst 11th best season all time, non-quarterback. So, which is also crazy that it's like 75 points less than the best season. Like that 480 points by Damon Thompson. That's crazy.
I don't think we're ever going to see a year like that again. And if we do, and that player doesn't have like a 85% fantasy championship rate that year, it'll be insane. But and I also think, just because I didn't mention the wide receivers in my argument, the fact that you mentioned that Devon Achane was smack in the middle of Puka and JSN, I think hurts their value for this, because none of us are even considering Achane in this conversation, as much as he had a great year and he deserved the props. I'm leaning CMC, but McBride made a good case.
Yeah, I'm going CMC too, and this is just half point scoring. It would change with PPR and probably even standard too, but half point, since that's kind of in the middle. Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson also finished ahead of Puka Nacua. Now, again, if he would have played that extra game, he did miss a game. So the fact that he was 1 game short and led all the wide receivers, with Devontae Adams being in the top, is an impressive feat as well. But that's kind of where we're at right now. And I'm with you, CMC for fantasy MVP.
All right. So that means our fantasy MVP was CMC. Our playoff MVP was Bijan Robinson. Draft steal of the year went to Chris Olave. Fantasy rookie of the year was Harold Fannin. Bust of the year was Brian Thomas. And waiver wire pickup of the year was Matt Stafford. We happy with our choices?
I think so.
Always good having a little post fantasy season debate with you on some of these things, and looking forward to next year soon enough. But we still have a couple things to talk about this year.
Yeah, we do. Let's hit games of the week. Let's get back into what's actually happening this week.
For half a second, I thought you led yourself into a bumper and then just totally forgot to hit a bumper.
Dude, I clicked it 3 times. It wouldn't fire. I was like, are you kidding me right now?
Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better. All right, so obviously I think there's 3 games that stand above the top here. I'm not going to name them because Cody's going to name any honorable mentions. I'm going to throw out my game of the week as the AFC North title game between the Ravens and the Steelers. Steelers on the fall, Ravens trying to get back together, get Lamar back. Obviously, one of the best rivalries in the NFL too, so a lot of going for it.
Yeah, I think that's a great game. You picked it first, so I obviously couldn't take it. You mentioned there's a lot of not great games. If you wanted to, I think the Denver game could be interesting, just to see if they actually get the number 1 seed.
Chargers sitting Herbert kind of kills that vibe, though. Yep.
I think Detroit, Chicago, even though Detroit has nothing to play for, the Ben Johnson rivalry could be fun.
Yeah.
Then I think you have to look at Saturday. The 2 big matchups. The Carolina Panthers at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This was going to be my game of the week until the Falcons won on Monday night. and now has a chance to backdoor Carolina into, even if they lose this week. So Carolina can now lose this week, and if the Falcons beat the Saints, they will still win the NFC South because they will win the three-way tie at 8 and 9. If they win versus Tampa Bay in Tampa Bay, they just get in automatically. Tampa Bay needs a win plus an Atlanta loss. So that kind of puts that a 2-game watch that you have to go to. But San Francisco at Seattle, winner gets the 1 seed, the loser gets the 5 seed, maybe the 6 seed, depending on who loses. Like, there's a lot of change there. Are you going to get a game at home? If you're San Francisco, are you going to get a game at home all the way through the Super Bowl? Are you going to have to go on the road to the winner of the NFC South? That's going to be something to pay attention to as well. And I'd also throw it out there that both of these teams are playing on Saturday. Would not be surprised if the loser of this game and the winner of the NFC South end up playing in the Saturday window for wildcard weekend as well. Just something to add a little bit of context to it.
Definitely. I could see that being the way that they make it fall, but maybe not. I don't know. So what I heard, and I haven't looked back and fact checked this, the Monday night game and wildcard weekend is always going to be a 4-5 game because it's not going to change. And like, people are going the most amount of teams are going to know their matchup before you go into that game, and nothing's going to change.
Yeah. I mean,
it could be the AFC 4-5. Like, I'm not even, that's possible too.
Yeah, I would guess that it would be the AFC 4-5 if that was the case. This is year 4 of the 7 seed. So only year 3 of the Monday night game. So yes, I don't know if that's just a coincidence, or if we're at the coincidence, or if that's like a legit thing where they're only putting the 4-5 there as well. But I would tend to guess the AFC would be there, especially because the Ravens or Steelers will be playing the Sunday night game. So if you look at it that way, the winner of that game will be the 4 seed in the AFC. Maybe they'll get to Monday because they have the night game on Sunday, kind of as a scheduling thing.
It kind of works out in the schedule. They did set up the schedule in a way that it makes sense no matter what happens, that they could put the Ravens or the Steelers in Monday night and it would make sense with the schedule. So yeah, it's a good point. I am very interested to see what happens in that first Saturday game with the Panthers and Buccaneers, and going to be a fan watching that Falcons game really closely if it falls the Buccaneers' way. And I did see a meme that is the most NFC South thing I've seen in a while, where it's like we got 2 teams playing for the division with the third best team a chance to tie both of them, and the best team in the whole division right now is the Saints, who have 6 wins.
Yeah, that is definitely interesting for sure. And I did see something funny too about that. Last year the Falcons missed the playoffs because they waited too long to sit Kirk Cousins for Michael Penix. This year they waited too long because they missed the playoffs because they waited too long to sit Michael Penix and play Kirk Cousins, which I thought was interesting.
Slightly different situation because Penix got hurt, but yes.
So,
which is why we can have a debate later, but people are thinking that Kirko is going to stay in Atlanta this offseason and not get traded again.
Oh, that'll be all fun to talk about. It does look like the injury reports are up to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
Not all the San Francisco. They have unspecified. I don't know why they have to do that for some of these guys.
Cool.
But in terms of Seattle, no big names. Trent Williams did not practice all week, but it says unspecified. But they have someone listed as Ricky Pearsall is listed as questionable. So I don't know why we're still not updating this all the way. But Kittle, McCaffrey, Trent Williams, unspecified. So do with that information as you wish.
Unspecified may mean no game status.
But they have like a little dash.
But
they also have the dash for one player. That's like they're off the injury report. So
okay. So I would assume that Kittle would have a game status. I don't think they would just mark him as he's playing after everything that's happened. So I don't think that's true, but I was just guessing.
Yeah. So
cool.
All right. You want to do a real quick Couch Jams World Cup update?
Let's do it. All right. So after last week's championships, Cody needed to hit the ultimate parlay, and he hit the reverse, which is what he said he would have bet. So good job there with your foresight. We had Colin lose a championship to I'm sorry, I'm totally forgetting who was even in the finals against him. But anyway, Josh S, Andrew T, and Ryan are the three that ended up advancing to the Couch GMs World Cup final. So as you see, we have our final 10: Tyler K, Shelby, Reed, Sean, Jason, Josh S, Andrew T, Anthony, Ryan, and then the one wild card, because we had 9 separate championships, goes to Bree, had her 30-12 record.
Yeah, for me, the big takeaway is in 3 years, no repeat champions is surprising. I mean, it definitely hurts the wild card opportunities when there's only one. We'll see if we run this back for another 4 years, or if we change some things up to maybe try to get some more wild card spots in there. We'll have to wait and see on how this all unfolds. But shout out to Ryan for making the most of year 3. He had a really tough outing the first 2 years. I mean, you can see on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, Twitch, or Facebook, 16 wins over 3 years. But this year he was able to get it done and get a championship. Anthony, same thing, 17 wins in those 3 years. So that's the beauty of the championship automatic qualifier. I mean, look, Colin had 29 wins, almost double what Ryan had, but Ryan's sitting there because he got it done in the fantasy playoffs, where Colin didn't, unfortunately. I mean, I'm 26 wins, so I know how it feels, Colin. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Colin not only had a chance in a fantasy championship in year 3 to get in, but he also just needed one of the other 2 repeat champions in a championship in the other 2 groups to get it done, and he couldn't get that either. He had 3 shots, one controlling his own destiny, and couldn't get it done. I know he was not feeling too great.
Yeah, it was a tough one for him, for sure. And also shout out to Marcus, the only player over 5,000 fantasy points across 3 seasons. That's a feat in itself.
It is, for sure. And the fantasy godfather can at least hold his head high, knowing that not only did he break 5,000, but he still gave himself a good shot to get into the finals as well. And I'm sure if we do run this back, he is going to be a force to be reckoned with. I'm surprised he didn't get in and get it done. But as you see here, we have the seeding on here as well. So in the order that these players are in is the order they're going to get to pick their draft spot in the Couch GMs World Cup final. Just as a little way to get people who had won championships in year 1 to keep playing through, try to get some seeding, give them a little bit of a boost in the final. So, Kempy, you're on the clock.
Nice. All righty. Anything else you want to add about the Couch GMs World Cup?
No. I mean, obviously, really wish I would have gotten in there too. I'm glad you at least had a shot and got closer. I was down at 22 wins, so didn't have quite as good of a 4-year run, but it's going to be interesting to see how it breaks through.
I should know this as one of the commissioners, but I know these get to pick their draft order. Are we doing that? The next 10 are in a group, and then the last 10 are in a group, or are we going to randomize these?
I think we're going to randomize it. So maybe you and I will get into a group next year because we were separate being commissions.
Yeah, that'd be fun for sure.
Yeah.
Alrighty. We will take this off the screen, put it back to George and myself. Before we get out of here, we do have a little bit of breaking news. I'm not going to hit the bumper because it's not super serious, but shout out Jordan Love and his wife announced they're expecting their first child. So big week for Jordan Love. Doesn't have to play this week in Minnesota. The Packers are going to the playoffs, and him and his wife are having a kid. So
any clear concussion protocol. It's all good things.
All good things for Jordan Love. All good things when you listen to the Couch GMs World Cup. I'm so about to sneeze right now. If you're watching my face right now on YouTube, it is pretty bad. All right, I think I got it. Woo! Sorry for that ugly face that you had to. If you're listening on the podcast, stop right now unless you're driving. Wait till you get to a red light or home. Go to YouTube if you want a good laugh. But this has been the Couch GMs podcast. We are live on Mondays and Thursdays, 6:30 p.m. Eastern on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and make sure you're following us on social media at the Couch GMs. Those same places, plus TikTok and X. We'll be back on Monday, breaking down Week 18, getting ready for the the NFL playoffs, because we are going to be here through the end of the season, breaking games down, doing DFS lineups, having a great time. We hope you join us. Hit the subscribe button. That would really be appreciated. Or rate us on their podcast app. I'm Cody Roadcap. That's George Kurtz. And I'll talk to you all next week.